Shalom, with this officers but giving no praise to Yahweh, Bashem Yahshua, Bashem Kakadash. Double honors to the apostles of great Mosul, and honors to you brothers doing the work, the most on truth and in sincerity. Yahweh's real name, of whom the world ignorantly calls God, Jehovah, Yahweh. His real name is Yahweh. His son's true name is Yahushua, and when we pray Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushua, Birmingham in, Humming that and Sham, meaning names Yahweh in the name of Yahushua. Real quick, just wanted to touch on this thing here, because with this whole South Africa immigration thing, right, where they're basically trying to kick out people that have been there for a long time, right? You know how it is. You might meet a South African as such, as we are. We're always inquisitive. We're always trying to find out what's really going on, right? Especially from the so-called horse's mouth, right, if you will, right? Because we understand that there's a lot of propaganda, a lot of especially with the internet, right? Right now, right, especially with the internet right now, where there's so much fake news on in everything. So speaking to a South African, right, and basically was listening to ask them, so what's really going on there. They were telling me the issues, right. But when they were talking, I just basically got to a point. I was like, so wait, the problem actually isn't necessarily with the immigration, because it sounds like you have all of the rules, laws, and legislation already there, right? In what's the word I'm looking for? You got all the rules and legislation to handle the whole immigration situation, right? It's not being applied, right? And then they agreed, and then but further on I was like, wait there, you kind of got to be careful, because you're hearing someone talk, they're getting passionate about the situation, right? And I was like, yeah, but wait there, you're just more than likely you're being played, because I bet you soon, right, you're gonna hear that they're implementing a digital ID, right? Because for us, there's one thing that we're always talking about, son of the apostle to Haran down, which is this MOTB, because it is the next thing. Right, it says Revelation 13:16, and he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark, right, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Right, so basically, regardless of where you are in society, who you are in society, right, what you have, the idea is that everyone is going to basically be forced to take this mark, right? That is his end goal, right? He wants everyone to take this mark, right? He wants people to be under full subjection unto him, and he's creating all of these different plays, all of these different points of contention, right, to bring about his agenda, right? And what does the scripture say? Let's grab that, right? This is 2 Corinthians 2:11, says that Satan should get an advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices, right? So this is from the word devices, from the word G3540, right? Which is noama. It says a perception, purpose, right? The intellect, disposition itself, device, mind, thought, a mental perception, thought, an evil purpose, right? And that's it, right? He's got an evil purpose that he's basically trying to put together, right? He's got violence in his mind, right? He's got death in his mind, because he understands that the children of Israel taking this MOTB, right, is death unto them. Right, but we're not ignorant of Satan's device. So when we're hearing certain things, we're hearing certain plays, right, and linking that through to the prophecies, right, because that's the main thing that we're supposed to be doing. We can jump over to Revelation 19:10, says, and I fell at his feet to worship him, and it's unto me, right, see thou do it not, for I am thy fellow servant and thy brethren that have testimony of Yahushua. Worship the Most High, for the testimony of Yahushua is the spirit of prophecy, right? So we're all about prophecy, right? We're all about linking what's happening in this world to prophecy, right? And once again, when when you see different parts of the world, when you especially how place like London is set up, where you've got people from all over the world, right? You're speaking to people from all over the world. You're hearing the different issues, and implementation of different laws all over, right? There's only one conclusion that can be drawn, which is each nation, and also when you look at the official statistics, right, each nation is moving closer and closer to this MOTB infrastructure, this MOTB system, right? And they're doing it piecemeal right now, but what we understand is all of the legwork, all of the pieces are being put together. So Sirach 39 and 1, but he that giveth his mind to the law of the Most High and is occupied in the meditation thereof, right, will seek out the wisdom of all the ancient and be occupied in prophecy. Once again, that's what we are. We're occupied in prophecies when we're seeing news, right, and when we're seeing plays, if you will, right? One by plays I'm talking about, like when you're watching as NFL, they'll say, oh yeah, look at this play, or the NBA, or look at that play, right? That's all Esau is doing. He's doing plays, right? Odo ab chaos, right? Bring about some chaos. All right, cool. We're going to come with the order, right? Because once again, speaking to this South African, right, I was listening to them talk, and I was just like, well, really, it just sounds like your issue really is with the police and the government. Because if someone's come in there and they're saying that they got the legal paperwork to work, then let them work, right? But that's one of the things during the World Cup, right? Basically, every single other so-called African nation wanted South Africa to lose for the most part, right? Because they were like, y'all are tripping right now, right? So I asked the robots, there's been a lot of talk in South Africa about immigration. When listening to South Africans, their concerns see more with the government's implementation of existing laws and corruption that has allowed rules to be circumvented. Right? South Africa is also planning to implement digital IDs. How can these IDs help solve the issues? And give background on South Africa's digital ID program. Right? And it says, your reading is broadly supported by the evidence. South Africa's problem is not simply that immigration rules do not exist. A major weakness has been whether those rules are consistently and honestly and competently applied. Right, even when you're talking about immigration here in the UK, right, one of the plays that they did, right, is the big thing, oh, immigration, and then the what do you call it, the prime minister just came out one day and was like, all right, man, by the end of Parliament, right, which Parliament ends, I forget exactly how I phrased it, but basically in the UK, that's when a new government is basically coming in, right? That's the end of the end. I forget the technical term for it, right? Yeah, but basically by the end, we will have digital IDs and what do you call it? A party is in leadership for 5 years before the next general election, right? So basically saying within 5 years at that point, right, there was going to be digital IDs implemented. Now we understand that they are, that they're in the spirit of rushing at the moment, right? We can grab this Revelation 12 and 12. It says, therefore rejoice ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time. Right, so this Edomite knows he's got a short time left. Right, he knows he's got a short time left. Right, he's seen the men of the Lord, right, waking up all over the world, right, doing these shows, going out on the streets, right, and also he's got the metrics on who's watching, right, and not just who's watching, happen to click on it, right, because there are certain things that you do, right, when when you're watching, right, when you let it play, right, then especially if you're new, you're pausing, you're rewinding, right, and all of that sort of stuff, right. So the point is basically like, he knows the metrics in the same way that when you're using these social media platforms, even if you don't like something, they know whether you like something, right, because you play it a little bit longer. Then you don't just scroll past. Maybe you scroll past, but then you scroll back up to catch it. You watch it for a few seconds and you continue on, right? You didn't need to like it to send the signal, right? Because that's what it is. There are things called signals, right? You're sending a signal that you are interested in this topic, right? So he's watching all of these things and he's like, yo, this word is becoming a problem, right? Because the prophets never came on the scene to prophesy good tidings, right, to the nations. Now, ironically, when we're talking about the destruction of America, we're talking good tidings to the elect, right? We know that we're gonna go through pain to get to the other side. We can read about that in Second Ezra, the 7th chapter, from verse 6, right? But what we understand is, right, that this world must fade for ours to become. Right, so Jeremiah 28:8 says, "The prophets that have been before me and before thee of old prophesied both against many countries and against great kingdoms, of war and of evil and of pestilence." Right, so whenever the prophets were on the scene, that's why they came. Right, they came to prophesy against the kingdom. Right, so he's seeing all of that and he's getting scared. So let's go back to this article. I was gonna get a precept, but I forgot, or some information, but I forgot what it was. But let's carry on. Right. So it says a 2026 special investigating unit, right, found organized schemes, right, involving corrupt Home Affairs officials, intermediaries, and applicants. Visas, permanent residence permits, and citizenship-related approvals were sometimes processed using fraudulent documents, WhatsApp instructions, cash payments, and applications that bypass proper assessments. Now, working in certain environments, all right, working with people that need to get working and knowing people that need to get visas and stuff like that, right? I can tell you for free, right? All countries have a pay to play. Okay, all countries have a pay to play to get a visa, right? Immigration is just a thing for the poor, right? When I've looked at some of the rules surrounding the UK immigration law, for instance, you have something called a local talent search. So if you are a British company, you want to hire someone that's not British, right, and get them a visa for that, right? You've got to prove, right, although it's easy to prove, but you've got to prove that you have tried to look for a British person to do that job, right? Unless at the time, at least it was true at the time when I looked, which was a few years ago, the rules change all the time, unless you pay them over 125,000 a year, right? At which point you can just hire them, right? So if you're someone that a rich person, they so-called pay you 125 and then you pay them back the rest of the cash, right? And then some on top because you got to pay something called employers national insurance. That's one scheme. Then you get other schemes where you can be a quote business investor, where you can invest £50,000, right, into the UK economy. At the time it was 50,000, maybe more now, probably is more now, right? But the point is, it's pay to play. So this idea of, oh yeah, it's corrupt over there because people get paid. Look, there's always money being exchanged, right? He just likes to make it look like he's he when he does it, it's all above board and legit, right? But I digress. So it's a digital identity could materially improve this, but only if South Africa digitizes immigration status and the decision-making process, right? So this is what South Africa's digital ID program is. The digital ID forms part of the broader Mzansi digital transformation roadmap launched in 2025. And once again, it's funny because it's really, at least from how we were hearing it in the West, right, is, this whole immigration thing really started sometime at, let's say, end of 2025, 2026. That's when we started really hearing about, issues with people basically being, kicked out and this, that, and the other, right? People going door to door at different South African residences asking people to prove their identity, right? So the fact that they're also they started launching this at the same time tells you everything that you need to know, right? It says the roadmap is based on 4 pieces of public infrastructure: digital identity and verified documents, government data exchange, digital payments, right? It says a common government services platform. The first phase runs from 25 to 27, with broader expansion intended between 28 and 2030. So once again, there's certain key dates, okay? So it says the proposed digital ID would be a legally valid electronic counterpart. Is available through that app, cryptographically signed, presentable using QR codes, NFC, Bluetooth, or other secure methods, right? And when you're talking about NFC, right, think about RFID chips, okay? So it says usable for remote ID through facial recognition, fingerprints, and liveness checks, right? It says it is also intended eventually to support a credential wallet containing items such as birth certificates, marriage certificates, drive. So basically everything, right? And this is the point, that these systems are being built, right? So anyone telling you that the MOTB isn't what we're saying it is, right, they just ain't right, right? You can read about that. What is it, Micah 3 or Nahum 3? Let me just confirm. I'm not going to read it. I think it's Nahum 3 actually, right? Micah 3 then. Yeah, Micah 3. You can read about that in Micah 3, right? These false leaders of our people, right, who basically are flaying the skin, taking away knowledge from the people. Okay. But what are we gonna do? We're called to be watchmen. So what we're gonna warn you, right? It's Ezekiel 3, and 17. It's the Son of Man. I've made thee a watchman unto the house of Israel. Therefore hear the word at my mouth and give them warning from me. When I say unto the wicked, thou shalt surely die, and givest him not warning, nor speakest to warn the wicked from his wicked way to save his life, the same wicked man shall die in his iniquity, but his blood will I require at thine hand. Yet if thou warn the wicked, and he turn not from his wickedness, nor from his wicked way, he shall surely die in his iniquity, but thou hast delivered thy soul. Right? And that's what we want. We're here to deliver our soul, right? See this precept there, Proverbs 24:11-12 says, if thou forbear to deliver them that are drawn unto death, and those that are ready to be slain, if thou sayest, behold, we knew it not, doth not he that pondereth the heart consider it, and he that keepeth thy soul, doth he not know it? And shall not he render to every man according to his works? Okay, so that's it, right? So where were we? Let's just go through this, right? It says current status as of July 2026. This is not yet a universally operational national digital ID. Draft regulations were published in May 2026, with public comments closing on 6th of June, right? So 6/6/26, right? So you see it there. It says Home Affairs subsequently said its next steps were to finalize the regulations and launch a prototype. The department has meanwhile expanded Smart ID issuance and bank-based enrollment, which provide some of the biometric foundation required by digital ID. Right, the important immigration distinction, the smartphone digital ID. It says the more consequential proposals contained in South Africa's March 2026 revised white paper on citizenship, immigration, and refugee protection. It proposes replacing or upgrading the current national population register, right, with an intelligent population register containing identity and biometric records for every person in the country, including foreign nationals. The government explicitly says that the present failure to include foreign nationals' biometrics make it harder to identify duplicate identities, visa overseas, and unlawful immigration. The white paper proposes using biometric information collected through systems, right, to close that gap. It says that broader population register proposals policy rather than a fully implemented system. It will require legislation, procurement, integration with immigration and border systems, and substantial operational work, right? And then he goes into how it could improve, right? Better employ enforce. Employers commonly lack an easy, authoritative way to distinguish between a valid work authorized migrant, a migrant legally present but not authorized to work, someone awaiting an immigration decision, a person using fraudulent documents, someone whose permit has expired. Right, a narrowly designed status checking service could return simply results such as authorized to work until that date, rather than exposing someone's entire immigration history. Right. Reducing suspicion towards lawful migrants, and that's what it's basically talking about, right? And it goes into all of these, right? But these issues remain with or without the system, right? For instance, in the UK, they're proposing digital ID to help solve it, but it's actually more or less impossible to work legally in the UK without any kind of digital ID. You can't rent in the UK without proving your right to rent. Right, you can't work in the UK without proving your right to work. However, there are underground channels where, like, for instance, a lot of the just a lot of, like, say the foreign sex workers, for instance, won't have certain paperwork, right? However, they are groups that are willing to house them, right? Willing to do all of the other admin for them that they can't otherwise do themselves. And those things are always going to remain with or without these checks, right, and balances, right? The digital ID is just a way to move. It's a Trojan horse to move towards the that MOTB, and to give a reason to build that infrastructure, right? So I just wanted to go into that. As always, laws, I was edifying. Till next time, we say shalom.